You know, I truly believe that this mostly misguided market manipulation madness by these monetary morons and crazed Keynesian quants will create a calamitous currency crisis. Say that 10 times fast. Yellen says that the Fed doesn't need to buy equities now, but Congress should reconsider allowing it. Now, either she's economically ignorant or she's evil. This is like a binary choice. She either believes that it's okay to create currency at whim, that by the way that it's created, it enslaves us or bids assets away from us and buys up equity in the biggest corporations in America. They're going to be buying American businesses. If it's publicly listed, they're going to be buying it. Now, she says that, or in the article it says, normally the Fed is only allowed to own government debt. I've talked about that before, yesterday's video. Government debt is a treasury. A treasury is the treasury selling off future taxation of our taxes to borrow currency today and spend it today. And so we have to work and pay those taxes, so that enslaves us in the future. And the Fed gets to just counterfeit currency into existence and buy that. And yesterday I showed, they're going to be doing, the program that they're doing is $625 billion every week. And James Bianco of Bianco Research showed that in 1 year, the Fed will own 2/3 of the US Treasury market. Well, the math that I did is if you take the $625 billion per week times 52 weeks, divided by the number of people in the United States, 330 million people, the currency that they're going to print and buy government debt with, you and me, we are going to owe on the average, $100,000, just under $100,000 per person in the United States, and that includes men, women, and children. And so you're talking about a newborn baby owing another $100,000 for 1 year of the Fed doing this. They already are born owing a lot. It's in my book. I can't remember the figure right now. Now, there is, and then agency debt with government backing. Agency debt, this is Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And so these are mortgage-backed securities that they're talking about here. And those mortgage-backed securities are backed by mortgages. And the Fed last week owned just under 1.5 trillion. This week it's probably above 1.5 trillion, making the Fed the largest holder of real estate on the planet. If you have a Fannie Mae or a Freddie Mac loan, there's a great likelihood that the Federal Reserve is the lien holder on your home. It's just an insane world that we live in. There is absolute proof that Keynesian economics does not work. There's one entity that has been out there for 30 years proving this year after year after year. It's run by Keynesians. They've never been able to achieve their goals, and they keep on going. Keynesians, they were taught this in college. They wrapped their entire life around this. If they admit that Keynesian economics, it does not work, that it's wrong, then their entire life has been for nothing. And so they have to hold on to these beliefs. But if she believes that it is moral to go out and counterfeit currency into existence and buy up our future taxes, enslaving us, buy up the mortgages on our house, making us, serfs, basically, and buying up the country's businesses, if she believes that that is moral, then she is evil. If she doesn't realize that that's going, then she's basically an economic imbecile. She doesn't know what she's doing. Keynesians, this is dangerous stuff. And there's one entity that has proven for 30 years, year after year after year, that Keynesian economics does not work. It hasn't got the slightest chance of working. And it's run by Keynesian economists, and they prove this over and over again, but they keep on doubling down on their theories without any results. And that entity is the Bank of Japan. This is the Tokyo Nikkei average, which is the stock market index of the 225 largest publicly traded corporations in Japan. And what you see is this going up and then going into a bubble in the late 80s, a huge stock market bubble. There was also a real estate bubble in the late 80s. It is said that the island that the Imperial Palace is on in downtown Tokyo, which I've driven past before, and this is only 0.44 square miles. It's a tiny island. If you're doing 65 miles an hour, you could traverse this island in probably 15 seconds or less. Now, it was said that island was worth more than the entire state of California. All the real estate in California. Now, I have driven California from the bottom to the top several times in my life. And it takes, if you drive nonstop, you can do it in about 12 and a half or 13 hours. But if you're a human that actually has to eat, take a relief break now and then, or if you don't have a 500-gallon tank of gasoline with you and you actually have to stop and refuel, it's going to take you around 16 hours. That's what it took me on these brutal trips. Usually, I would split it into a 2-day drive, compared to a 15-second drive. That'll give you an idea of the scale of their real estate bubble. When this popped, the Bank of Japan jumped in with stimulus after stimulus, propping up all of these banks that were badly capitalized, badly organized, and took risks that were far too great. During this bubble, their inflation spilled over into the United States. They bought up all the prime real estate in the major cities in the United States, including like in downtown New York. They bought up Rockefeller Center. They bought buildings in Chicago and downtown Los Angeles, and they caused inflation in those sectors, these sort of localized bubbles. And they bought MGM Studios, became Sony Studios, and the bubble popped. And all of these financial institutions that should have gone bankrupt were propped up and became the zombie banks. And then they started propping up corporations, and they became zombie corporations. And what has happened is you have what is called a zombified economy. They've been in a pretty severe recession for the past 30 years. It hasn't really ended. It's 3 lost decades of growth because they've got this zombified economy. It's the walking dead. And it's falling again. And they made it legal for the Bank of Japan to buy stocks. And so they buy an ETF of the Nikkei 225 in order to try and prop this up. And they've bought half of it. 50% of the largest companies in Japan is owned by the Bank of Japan, and they can't get the stocks to go up. Now, Yellen is thinking that, well, if the stock market does well, if that number is high, the points on the stock market, then the economy must be doing great. Well, she is dead wrong, and dead is the word because this is deadly. I want to go to our front page on goldsilver.com and show you that the price of paper IOUs for gold is about $1,650, and the paper IOUs for silver is about $15. However, if you're going to buy real gold, you're going to pay $100 to $200 more than the fake gold. If you're going to buy real silver, it's going to be between $5 and $10 more because silver is hard to get. Anybody that's been going through this decline in price in silver, you haven't really experienced the decline. Take a look at what your silver products are selling for on eBay. You just got to go down and click the completed listings or whatever it is, and you'll see what it's been selling for. So the gold-silver ratio has fallen from 124 to 108, so it's declining. But the real gold-silver ratio never actually reached that 124. Silver has maintained more of its value than you think. And currently, depending on the product that you're looking at, it's somewhere between, if you take American Silver Eagle, American Gold Eagle, or a silver bar versus a gold bar, you're talking about somewhere between 70 to 1 and 90 to 1, depending on the product, not 108. Moving on the radar, Sven Heinrich. If you haven't followed him, go to northmantrader.com and read some of his articles he writes every day, and he's spot on. The Fed is no longer the buyer of last resort. The Fed is the buyer of permanent resort, and soon the buyer of everything. And Max Keiser, real Max Keiser, responds, "This is what neo-feudalism looks like." Thank you, Max. Max, I've interviewed him a few times. We've met before. I brought him in to speak at a conference that was being held in London, and he is just spot on things. Chart of the day. This is from Peter Brandt. Gold has completed an inverted continuation head and shoulders pattern. This will reach a long-standing target of 1780 with a further possible target at 1932. And I don't know where he gets the 1780 from. That could be Fibonacci or something like that, some other target. But this right here, he's got, 1790.9. That target, this little red line, this is an inverse head and shoulders. So a shoulder, a head upside down, and another shoulder, and you draw a hinge across the neckline, and you flip that upside down, and that's the target right there. So that's where he got that from. But this is maybe good news, maybe bad news. I don't know. I want to welcome the almost 1,100 new subscribers. Thank you very much. Don't forget to please share these videos on Facebook and Twitter. Behind the scenes, this is we interviewed Max Keiser a couple of times, once in Paris, once in London. This is in London after, he was appearing at a comedy club. He does these stand-up improv routines that are all based around politics and economics, and it's hilarious. When Max is on, he's on. But if you watch Hidden Secrets of Money, make sure, at least in those first few episodes, but most of them, there's something good at the end of the credits. And you want to watch all the way to the end of the credits. And so you want to watch for Max's voice crack and his definition of fiat. And viewer feedback. This is the COVID-19 cure worse than the disease? Now, I do some math in here, and poverty creates shorter lifespans. You don't live as long. The people that have the greatest prosperity, the greatest access to good medical care, good food, balanced diet, don't have as much anxiety and stress, then they live up to 14 years longer. The people in the 25% most prosperous societies live 14 years longer than the poorest society, the 25% of the poorest societies. And even if our incomes just fall because of all of this, the quarantine, this shutting down of the global economy, if our incomes fall by just the percentage that would do the same as putting us into the second most prosperous quartile, which I think that's around a $5,000 or $6,000 a year drop in our average incomes, it would be the equivalent of the shortened lifetimes. If you add them all up, it's the equivalent of 22 million deaths. So if you didn't watch that one, go and watch it so that you understand the economics of quarantine and the economics of coronavirus. A Google user, Mike, you have said that this will probably be a short deflation, and we are most likely going into a hyperinflation. I believe that this has a much greater chance now than just big inflation, that hyperinflation is probably our destiny. You have also said previously a hyperinflation can happen overnight because a hyperinflation is a loss of confidence. It's a loss of confidence in a fiat currency, a fun ticket with a picture of a dead guy and some digits scribbled on it. When we start to feel that it's a bad decision to store value, to sell something or work for a picture of a dead guy with some numbers on it that has no backing behind it, there's really nothing there except confidence in the currency. Once that confidence is lost, a hyperinflation happens because nobody's willing to trade. You have to offer more and more and more of these fraud tickets to be able to purchase something because nobody wants to let go of something for those things. They want real money usually in hyperinflations, and that's gold and silver. Do you think the coming hyperinflation will be long and drawn out? This is supposed to be I'm sure, possibly an overnight event? It won't be overnight, but I think what we're going into is this is going to be a vicious, wicked deflation, and it'll probably be pretty fast the way that they've never shut down the global economy like this. We've never had a global collapse in GDP like this in the history of the planet. And then there will be a bottom where the Fed and the world central banks will be saying, oh, they've stabilized everything, we've fixed everything, we've cured it. But people are going to be storing all of that currency. You got to watch episodes 6 and 7 to understand velocity of currency. And when that currency comes out of hiding, yes, it'll be slow at the bottom, but things will progress slowly until the day that they are no longer slow, and then it will be very, very quick. Thank you, longtime subscriber, about 8 years plus, God bless you. No, thank you for being a subscriber, even during the dark times. When I was sort of being considered a nut because, I stuck to my guns for the past, since my first video was 2005, so it's 15 years that I've been saying basically the same thing, and they never let the markets clear in the crisis of '08. And so this is just a continuation of the 2008 global financial crisis. This is the second half accelerated by the coronavirus. I don't know how to say this, so I'm not going to make an attempt, but this is brilliant, and I'm probably going to steal it from you. If I knew how to say this, I would give you credit. I'll just say one of my followers. The difference between 1 and 1 trillion is 12 keystrokes, and he's quoting himself. I think that's great. Bastion of Hope. Whenever Frank Sinatra came to New York, he would call my ex-girlfriend's father, Mickey Gravine or Gravin, I'm not sure, I'm dyslexic, I don't know how to pronounce names very well, to play trombone in the band. And Frank Sinatra did this a lot. He had his favorite musicians in a whole bunch of different cities, and he'd populate the band with whoever. And then he took his core group, the rhythm section, with him always, and his conductor. By the way, for many years, his conductor was Vince Falcone, who I hired 3 times to play. My former business was producing some events, and he would play those events, and he'd bring an orchestra. He lived in Las Vegas, and I produced the event in Las Vegas. I thought that was pretty cool. I think that's cool too. The first Sinatra concert that I went to, I was about 18 years old, borrowed my father's Lincoln. My friend Cameron, his girlfriend Linda, I got all dressed up, 3-piece suits. Everybody used to wear, they'd get dressed to the hilt. They'd wear tuxedos, evening gowns, and go and see Frank Sinatra back then. We pulled up, very first concert, to the Universal Amphitheater before it was domed over. Valet opens your door and takes your car. Somebody takes your ticket. There is no line. And you walk in under these trees with twinkly lights in them. You buy some hors d'oeuvres and a bottle of champagne. You go out and listen to Frank, sit down under the stars. Frank Sinatra walks out with a full-on big band and a string section. This was a level of elegance and style that just does not exist today, and it's sad. It was really like being able to step in to a Fred Astaire film. Quote of the day. But first, download a copy of my book. It's free, and all of the answers you're looking for really are in there. Only the individual thinks. Only the individual reasons, only the individual acts. Ludwig von Mises. And what he's saying here is that society is an agreement of individuals. Socialism does not work because the individuals think, reason, and act, and trying to create a socialistic structure where the government makes us take care of everybody inverts the laws of nature. Your natural tendencies are to take care of yourself, you and your family first, your friends second, people that you empathize with third, and strangers last. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you next time.